myself. Hold on. Always forget. So for this paper, again, you're going to be using some similar skills in the narrative too. So you're going to be taking one of these articles. You're pretty much going to be saying, okay, I agree, strongly agree or disagree with them because. Then you're going to kind of list out your reasons. So you're going to take at least 3 reasons from August and Tannen's piece. And remember, we practiced summarizing their article last week. Right? So we mapped out all their different arguments. So you're going to take about 3 points from one of these articles, and you're going to basically use your own experiences, use your own observations to show, okay, here's why August or Tannen's right, here's why August or Tannen's wrong. So you're not going to be doing research for this paper. That's going to be the next 2 papers. But you are going to be bringing in your own insights and observations, your own types of personal stories and anecdotes, to kind of illuminate your point about one of these articles.
I have a question really quick.
Okay.
So this is specifically for August's article. For that one, would it be good to read some of the sources that he quoted and whatnot to make sure that he didn't take anything out of context?
That's probably not necessary, I would say. Yeah. You're pretty much just responding to the points he makes, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can definitely say, okay, this is a weak point he makes, or this is a strong point he makes, but you're gonna mostly just be bringing in your own, like I said, your own observations, your own insights as to why he's right or why he's wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, you're thinking good there, but you probably don't have to go that far with it, I would say.
Okay.
So, what do you need to do this paper then? So, you're going to need. Well, let me just kind of map it out for you. Kind of outline out what this is going to look like. So for this paper, you'll need an introduction paragraph. So the introduction is where you catch the reader's attention. Whoops. Hold on. Let me kind of map this out better. There we go. So to start this paper out, like I said, you're going to have an introduction. This is something that I will hammer you on, okay, because I want you guys to practice good introduction strategies. So the boring way to start a paper out is where you say something like, in today's society, gender bias is a big problem, right? That's kind of a boring way to start a paper. Some good strategies for doing an introduction. You want to catch the reader's attention right away. You don't want to make me want to slit my wrists from the first sentence on, right? You kind of want to hook me. You want to get me engaged, with what I'm getting ready to read. So the way to do that is, provide a quote. You can provide a quote. So maybe If you're talking about one of the articles, maybe you can bring in a quote or an outside quote from somewhere that you know. You can start out with an interesting fact or statistic. You can start out by telling a brief story to kind of get your reader's attention. So there's lots of good ways to get your reader engaged without just starting in that boring way. Now, I will tell you guys this about writing an introduction. Sometimes I'm going to make you write your introduction first, as I'll talk about in a minute. That sometimes, lots of times people like to write their introduction last after doing everything else in a paper. I personally don't think that's a good idea, but some people do it. But, you at least need the thesis statement part of your introduction down before you get started, I think. But as far as the attention grabber and all that, you could probably do that last, however you like to work. But that's something I'm really going to hit you hard on. I want to see a strong opening. I don't want a boring opening. Okay, start out with one of these strategies. And what you guys are going to do for Friday is you're going to be actually posting your introductions with your thesis statements to the discussion forums. And I'm going to have you guys critique each other's introductions and thesis statements. So, if you think that somebody's starting the paper out in a boring way, say so. Maybe give them an idea for how they can do better. So, like I said, introductions. If you don't catch my attention right away, you're already kind of losing me as a reader. All right, so you make sure you grab that attention. Of course, you guys are kind of did that already with the narratives, right? Of course, you're telling a narrative instead of an academic essay, but still you want to kind of grab the reader's attention right away, even in a narrative. And of course, the biggest part of the introduction, this is the most important part of the paper. And I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about this. If you guys can get this skill down, you automatically become a better writer. Okay, this is the key. If you don't get this one sentence down, your paper is going to fall apart. Okay, this is the glue that holds your whole paper together. And this is your thesis statement. Let me switch handouts really quick. So I don't know how much you guys have been taught about thesis statements in high school, but I like to have thesis statements done in a very particular way. If you follow this way I'm giving you, I've found over years of teaching that if you write it in this kind of way, you tend to have a more organized essay. So it says, since your paper will respectively consider both sides of an issue before coming to a conclusion, it's important to reflect both sides in your thesis statement. Fill in the blanks with the other side's position on your issue, your own position, and the main reasons or premises that support your position. So the three parts of a thesis statement then. You have the first part that says, while some or while others believe blank, fill in the blank, right? That's called the tension phrase, You're putting your belief in tension with an opposite belief, right? So you might say something like, while August makes the point that men are discriminated against, right? I disagree, right? That's the second part. The second part is where you state your belief. This is your belief that you're going to be arguing through the paper. So for this, you're pretty much going to be stating, hey, do you agree or disagree with August or Tannen? Then because this is the most important part of the whole thing. You see reasons 1, 2, and 3. What you're going to, reasons 1, 2, and 3. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be taking some of August or Tannen's points, right? So I don't know. We can kind of fill this out in a second. But you're going to be taking some of August Tannen's points, and those are going to be the points you're going to argue and whether you agree or disagree with them. These, you need at least 3 of these, at least 3. You can do more than 3 if you're so inclined. Probably 3 is always the baseline minimum number for doing an argument, right? 3 reasons. You can provide 3 reasons, you're doing pretty good. So this whole thing is important because the reasons you list here are going to be the reasons that you're going to get whatever order you put your reasons in here. That's going to be the order that you go in during the paper. Okay, the order you go in during the paper. So if you can get this thesis statement right, it's almost like this one sentence that governs how the whole rest of the paper goes. If you don't get your thesis statement right, what happens is that you spend more time explaining the article and summarizing the article instead of actually arguing with the article. So you got to get this thesis statement right to make sure that you're on track. And that's going to be one thing that you guys are going to be doing for Friday as well. I want you to write your attention grabbers, but the thesis statement is going to be the main thing I want you guys to critique with each other for Friday. So make sure that the person has a good thesis. Sometimes where they go wrong, you want to make sure in your reasons that they're all different enough from each other where you're not repeating the same thing over and over. So that is something that you want to think about too. Make sure that all your reasons that you list are different enough where you're not repeating yourself. So that's something to make clear too. So I'm just kind of make something up here just to show you how this works. So you kind of see, I just kind of made that up, on the fly, but you guys can see what I'm doing here. So I kind of put her belief, Tannen's belief, in opposition with another belief. So while others believe that women are on an equal playing field with men, I agree with Tannen that women are marked because And then you see I pretty much just took her reasons from the paper. Because of dress, hairstyles, and last names. So if I was going to go along with this thesis, that would be how I would, that's going to be the order in which I go in the paper. So, and of course, you're going to be bringing in your own reasons for why you think that dress, hairstyles, last names, why you think it would be right in the, her argument's right in this case. So make sure you get this thesis. If there's anything I teach you in this whole class, you want to make sure you have good thesis statements. Because if you don't, your essay is going to be shit. Okay, this is the glue that holds it together. This is kind of an elementary way to write a thesis. You know, lots of times I've had really bright students before complain, like, oh, this is kind of a basic model. Well, it's one of those kinds of cases where, you know, don't mess with what's not broken. Right? Even though this is kind of mechanical, you know, it's a case where it'll keep you on track. Hell, even in my own writings, I still write my thesis statements this way. So don't mess with what's not broken. It's a good mantra here. So you guys tell me, any questions about what I'm wanting with a thesis? Anything at all? You know, maybe speak up or write in the chat box. Anything that I can address about theses, because this, like I said, of everything I teach, this is going to be what holds your paper together. Let's see here. Dylan asked, do I want the thesis strictly like that example? Well, pretty much, right? Just follow that formula I give you. I give you places, like in the thesis creator, I give you ways to fill in the blanks to kind of get your thesis right the way that you want it. But yes, follow that model. While some argue this, you know, I agree or disagree with this because 1, 2, and 3, or 1, 2, 3, and 4. So yes, definitely follow that model. You know, like I said, if you don't, if that sentence isn't in there, the whole thing is going to fall apart on you. You know, it doesn't matter how much you write. You can write 5 pages, but if you don't have a thesis statement, the paper is going to fall apart. This is the foundation for your whole paper. Other questions, comments, concerns about thesis statements before I go back to outlining out the rest for you? Did you guys talk about thesis statements in high school? That's something I would be interested to know.
For me personally, yeah, we talked a lot about thesis statements. We had a little workshop in my senior English class where we worked on those.
Did you take AP or regular English?
I was in the AP. What they did for me personally in the class that I was in, they had the AP and the honors together. I was in honors, but I wasn't in AP.
Right. That's good.
And really quick, so now in the thesis, I know that we are usually supposed to refer to ourselves as I, but in the rest of the essay, do you want that, or do you want us to kind of distance ourselves from it to make it seem more professional?
This is going to be a paper where it's, again, okay to use first person, okay? Because this is going to be a case where you're bringing in your own stories, your own observations to back up your points. So it is okay to use the first person in this paper, just like it was with narrative.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question. But the conventions for this paper, yeah, it's okay to use first person. I talked about cutting clutter last week, and I said sometimes in your sentences you can cut the first person out to make sure your sentences aren't cluttered. But as far as using it, that's okay. It's okay for this. So yeah, good question there. Rick says that they never talked about thesis statements when they went to school. Dylan said no too. Might just depend on, did you take a honors or AP type English class? It kind of shocks me because even if you just take a normal English class, that's something that you should know, how to write a thesis. Did
It
they?
says a lot about the English teachers in the high schools around here.
Yeah, don't get me started on that one. Right? Did they teach you to write it in a way similar to that, Nicole, when you took it?
When I took it, I had Mr. Eames at Wyoming East, and he did a really good job of helping us just up our writing skills on so many levels. But some of the other teachers there, I don't know if it was their fault completely, but they mainly focused on grammar and not really putting it into use in essays. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. It's kind of funny how that works sometimes, right? You spend 10 years in high school, in middle school, grade school, high school. They teach you how to use commas for those whole 10 years. Then you still don't know how to use them when you actually write, right? It's kind of funny
Or
how
they,
it works, right?
yeah, or they teach you commas and not semicolons and things like that.
Know how to do it on a worksheet, but not when you're not in your actual sentences. So, or
Now, I know of some teachers that still in high school were teaching the robot paper outline system.
tell me about that. That's something I don't know a lot about.
It's just it was kind of just a way to start your outline and really figure out how to get it done, but they would have you write down your points that you wanted just to basically encompass in a paragraph. Like you would write your point and then you would write supporting things for that. But really, sometimes it would end up not being cohesive at all. And it had the firstly, secondly, lastly, all that.
Oh God. Yeah. Don't ever use those transitions like secondly, thirdly, lastly. That's lazy writing. Yeah. So, oh man, that kind of stuff just irritates me to hear. A robot should never be grading your writing. That's just something that should never happen. They're trying to move into that in higher education too, but we're doing a pretty good job resisting it compared to the K to 12. Good. Dylan says he took AP until February, and then COVID happened. Yeah, that's something that I was noticing in narratives. Some of you guys are talking about high school and talked about how everything was kind of disrupted in your last year. I kind of feel bad for you guys for that.
Well, not even just that, but the people that were seniors last year, they also had to deal with the strike and being out of school for that as well.
Yeah, the strike the year before that. Yeah. Yeah, the 2 years before that, I guess there was 2 strikes. So
I was lucky enough to be in Virginia for my junior year while all that was going on. At the time, I didn't think I was lucky, but afterwards, I realized that I was.
right. Yeah, that's something I didn't think about. People's last years of school being impacted by that, but I guess for sure it was. So back to the point at hand. We go back to the prompt. So again, the thesis statement. Follow the model I provided. You guys can get to that thesis creator sheet. It's up on our module. Okay, so that is already up for you so that you can reference it. You're going to be using that model for this paper and the fourth paper in the class. You're going to be using it for both instances. So that's going to be a skill that we go back to even after this paper. So number 2. '18 font here. So the second part of your paper is what you call the summary paragraph. The summary paragraph. So I like you to do this right after the intro because it accomplishes several different purposes. Well, it shows, number one, that you know the article inside and out, right? So even the points that you don't talk about in your paper, in your thesis statement, you still want to talk about that in the summary, right? So sum up all of August Tannen's main points from their article. Well, we practiced that last week, right? We made the whole map of all their points, right? So just basically in your own words, sum up what one of the authors said. Simple as that. So we practiced that. That was last week's lesson, right? When we mapped it out. I showed you guys if you map that out, you can write a summary really easy because you know all the author's points. So you want to make sure you do this right after the introduction, and you want to contain summary just in that paragraph. You want to contain it just in that paragraph. It shows that you're well read on the article. It shows that you understand the article. It establishes your ethos. It establishes your credibility. If you can do a good summary. But that's the only part of the paper where I want to see summary, okay, in that one paragraph. No summary besides that one paragraph. If you can contain it there, your writing is going to be better because lots of times students will tend to want to summarize all throughout the paper. And that's not what I'm looking for. So I want that summary contained in that one paragraph, 1 or 2 paragraphs right after the intro. Something I should mention here too, I'm outlining this out for you, but as far as paragraphing goes, I'm not saying just have 1 paragraph for the introduction, 1 paragraph for the summary. The way I'm outlining this is mostly the sections of the paper you need. You should paragraph break whenever you think that readers need a break, right? Or maybe you're transitioning to a different idea or something like that. You want a paragraph break when you think that the reader deserves a break. So usually after about half a page or so, it's always a good idea to paragraph break. I don't care how many paragraphs you have, so long as they're well developed. Okay. So the worst thing in the world is a paragraph that goes like a page and a half long, right? Because it's hard to keep your attention. It's hard to keep your attention focused on paragraphs that go that long. So pace, like I said, I'm talking about sections here, but pace your paragraphs. Keep the reader engaged that way too. You don't want to drag on too long. Again, keep up summary contained here. Sum up all the main points, even the ones you don't talk about in the paper. So that is the second section. Then after this, everything becomes pretty straightforward. So after this, you're going back to the points that you made from your thesis statement. So the way that you organize your sections here to make sure that you stay on track. This is kind of a silly metaphor, but we called it, a metaphor for this from a textbook I found is a burger. Your sections are like burgers. So let me explain. So it's like a burger, and there's 3 layers to it. You got the bread and the meat in the middle. So the first part is the topic sentence. The topic sentence. So it seems it's going to seem a little mechanical to you when you write. But basically, you're just going to refer back to your thesis statements. And you're going to write that point from your thesis statement again. So the thesis statement that we were practicing a second ago, my first point was, I agree with Tannen because of dress. So in this topic sentence, I would almost just restate that all over again and say, I think Tannen's argument is right because of all the different styles of clothing women wear. So you're repeating the same point you made in your thesis statement. It might seem repetitive, but it's not. That's called a topic sentence. And that refers the reader back to your thesis.
And even though you repeat it, it doesn't have to be word for word. It can be in a different way.
Exactly, right. You want to rephrase it a little bit to, where it's not copy and paste, right? But still, you're repeating the same idea here. But again, like you said, mix up your wording, right? Good paragraphs always start with topic sentences. Because again, if you don't have a topic sentence keeping you on track, you're going to spend more time summarizing the article instead of analyzing it. So the middle is called the meat. And what you do here is you basically, in just a sentence or two, just explain the point. So let's say you're talking about Tannen and dress, right? You say, well, Tannen claimed that there's all these different styles for women's clothing, and no matter what kind of clothes they wear, women are marked, right? So that is the middle part. So almost the most important part of this type of paragraphing is the last part, the bottom bun, and that's your interpretation. So what you do here is, this is where you bring in your own stories, your own observations, your own insights into the fray. So you're bringing in your own stories. So I think Tannen's right because of dress. Well, one of my friends, wore something to school once, right? And she wore spaghetti straps, right? She was forced to leave school, right? Because of the dress code. A boy would never have to do that, right? You guys can kind of see what I'm doing here, right? I'm bringing in stories to back up the point. And they're stories from your own life, right? Your own experiences, your own insights, observations. I found with teaching these articles over the years, everybody's got lots of interesting stories to bring into this, because this is something that impacts everybody in some way. So yeah, think about it. Think about the last part of your section here like it's a mini narrative almost. But you're using your little mini narrative to prove your point, about the article. That's your evidence. And pretty much what you do from there is point two. So point two. Point three. So however many points you have, at least three, right? Remember, at least three. However many points you have, that's where you bring this in. So bringing in your own stories and experiences and observations. Topic sentence to kind of tie it together. So that's going to be the main part of your paper then, right? All these different, you're bringing in his or her points, and then you're arguing with them using your own stories. If I don't see your own stories in here, that's a problem, because that's the main thing that I'm looking for, bringing in your own stuff. It doesn't have to be something that directly impacted you, right? Maybe it's something that you saw on TV or something like that, or a movie. So you can bring stuff like that in too. Then the last part of your paper is, of course, the conclusion. So let me say this about conclusions. Do not repeat what you just wrote. So don't regurgitate what you just wrote. That's how they teach you to do it in high school. And frankly, that's bad. You don't want to do that. My attention span isn't so bad that I can't remember what I've just read in the last 4 pages. Right? I'm not that bad off. Regurgitating what you just said is a good strategy if you're writing something really lengthy. So maybe later in your college career, you'll do a capstone paper. Usually capstone papers are like 20 to 30 pages long, depending on your major. Later, if you're doing a capstone paper, summarizing what you just read is a good what you just wrote is a good strategy, because maybe you had a lot to cover there. But for just 3 or 4 pages, right, that's not necessary just to sum up what you've written. I hate that. I hate that they teach you how to do it that way, because it's annoying. So what do you do then? You might ask. Well, one way to do it is sort of a call to action. Right? So maybe you're directly addressing the reader to change something about how he or she perceives the world. Right? A call to action. Okay, we just talked about this, so what can you do about it? Right? That's kind of a way that you can do it. Hook and return. So in the opening, let's say in the opening paragraph, you brought in sort of a story to start out. Well, in your conclusion, you can return back to that story to kind of bring it full circle. Right? So that's another way that you can do it. A hook and return, bringing the whole paper full circle with how you started it. So let me see here. One moment. You can also bring in an anecdote. And so again, another story to cap off the conclusion. Right? That's another thing you can do to kind of tie it together. I'm looking at my handout. And another strategy for doing this is larger significance. That's where you kind of show the reader why this issue in fact matters. Why should the reader give a damn about this topic? So there's lots of strategies here for doing a conclusion. It looks like my camera's off. I don't know why. Lots of strategies for doing a conclusion besides just summing up what you've written. I don't want to see a conclusion where you just sum up what you've written. All right, so break that habit now, throw it out the window. Everything they taught you for 12 years of high school was a lie, right? Because that's not how you do it. There's, again, start the paper out in an interesting way and end it in an interesting way. Don't be mechanical. So intros and conclusions. That's something that I'm going to heavily grade you on. Right, your intros and your conclusions. Questions about that? Conclusions, or the way that I just mapped out the whole rest of the essay? Anything like that I can address? Give a second in case one of you type a message. All right then. So I went over what I expect. So the rest of the guidelines then. So the paper is going to be about 4 to 5 pages or so. At least 4, I would say. So to do all this stuff justice, I mean, that's how long it'll take you to do. But if let's say you're 3.5 and you adequately cover everything, right? I'm not going to hammer you on that, right? So long as everything is there. I say 4 pages just to kind of give you a baseline for where you should be. If you have 2 pages, that's probably not enough to cover what you want, right? So slightly longer paper than the narrative. So we have, as far as our calendar goes, we have a couple of weeks till this thing is due. And we're going to be doing it in chunks, okay, little chunks. So this Friday coming, like I said, I want you to write your introduction with your thesis statement. You guys will be critiquing each other's on Blackboard. The week after that, so Friday a week from now, what will that day be? That will be the 9th. Weekend of the 9th, I'm going to expect you to have the whole draft written. So by the 9th, I'm going to expect you to have that whole draft written. And that'll be when you guys peer review each other on Blackboard. And so you'll post your whole draft and you'll write feedback back to your peers. Again, for that, you don't want to just say, this is the best paper I've ever written. You deserve the Nobel Prize for Literature. Right? That's not your goal. Your goal is to give helpful feedback. It's going to make your fellow students better. But then the paper will actually be due on the 12th, Tuesday the 12th by 11:59 p.m. Tuesday the 12th. So we got a couple of weeks until this thing is due. So next week I'm actually going to be starting to talk about the third assignment next week, while you guys are working on this one. So we'll at least get the ball rolling in that regard starting next week. So again, remember the submit your files as Microsoft Word documents. You don't submit PDFs, don't submit Pages files. So if you use a MacBook and you use Pages as your word processor, remember to switch it over for me. And that is pretty much it as far as, like I said, about 2 weeks, and then things due. So questions, comments, concerns, anything at all that I can address? Give me thumbs up on the Zoom if you guys are feeling good. Give me the thumbs up. All right, I see some. There we go. All right. All right, so now that's the main part of class for today. So now we're going to switch to the enhanced part of the class. So if you guys, again, if some of you aren't in enhanced, you can stick around if you want, but now's your time to go if you don't want to stick around. How do you, Nicole asked me, how do you change a Pages document to a Word document? Oh, hold on a second and I will answer that question for you. I'll actually type this grammar lesson out on Pages so I can show you how to do it. So let's get straight to it then. So I'm using Pages on a Mac. So this is for you guys who use Macs in here. But I don't know if you guys can see the top of my screen, but on Pages you click File, and then you click Export to Word, and that'll then save it to your computer as a Word document. So if you use Pages, that's how you do it. You click Export to Word, and then it becomes a Word document. And that's how you submit it to me. All right, good that you know. You guys can, Word and PowerPoint and Excel and all that stuff does come for free as part of your Southern tuition. So I do want to make that clear to you. You do get those softwares for free as part of your tuition. So if you're not taking advantage of that, do so. Shoot me if you don't know how to go about doing it, shoot me an email and I'll tell you how. Right, I think you do it all on Office 365, I think. But you can still download the whole suite of software to your computer and you'll have it. You'll have the license through Southern so long as you're a student. I'm sure you guys even will have to use Excel or PowerPoint or something like that at some point during your college careers. So I'm going to do a couple of things in this lesson. I'm going to teach you some common misspellings and things like that. And I'm also going to show you how to quote in the text. So how to quote in the text. I have actually have a separate handout for that. So I'm actually going to switch back the word because I do not like pages. So common misspellings. There, and there. Okay, there, and there. So for this one, there, THEIR is when you're saying that's a possessive word. So you might say something like their car, right? Their book, their house, whatever the case is. So if you spell it THEIR, that's how it is. It's a possessive. THERE is a noun, right? It's a place. You might say something like neither here nor there. That's a place over there. And THEY''RE is, of course, they are, is a contraction. So I see these all the time. I see people spelling like what should be THERE as THEIR, or instead of using the apostrophe, THEY''RE. Sometimes people don't use the apostrophe, right? Or they use the THERE. So make sure that you that you use the correct one. The next grammar quiz I'll give you will be on this type of stuff. Okay, it'll be a really easy quiz because it'll be about this type of stuff. It's and its, same principle. So maybe we're talking about a cat or something, right? Its bowl, right? So it's like that as a possessive. Its bowl. Its litter box. IT apostrophe S, this means it is. Okay, pretty simple, easy peasy in that regard. Your and your. This is another one that I want to address because it's a common one. Your and your. So your, the first one is again a possessive. Your book. While you apostrophe RE, you are. Okay. So again, pretty common one. Hold on a second. I will actually Google some other ones. I know affect and effect I want to talk about. Here and here. Right, that's another misspelling I see a lot. Hear is a verb, right? I hear the sound. Here, H-E-R-E, is a place. Right? Again, neither here nor there. This next one is one that's a little harder. Affect and effect. Affect and effect. This one drives me crazy because I see it misused all the time. But affect and effect, affect is a verb. So I'm just making a sentence up, but the price of tea in China affected the world economy. So when you say affect, you're using it as a verb. Something affected something else. Okay. If you're using effect, that's a noun. So you would say something like cause and effect. So that is a noun. And this, you can say something like increased temperatures on Earth is an effect of burning fossil fuels. Right? Again, I'm making a sentence up, but you see what I mean. Cause and effect. You use effect whenever it's a noun. You use affect when it's a verb. Most of the time when I see this one misused, it's when you mix them up, right? You might use effect as the verb or affect as the noun. So make sure you get that one right. That's one that's that's a fine distinguishment there. It's not as clear as something like there, and there. This next one might seem elementary too, but you would be surprised at how often I see it. No and no. Right? I can't tell you how often I've seen K-N-O-W spelled as N-O. I can't tell you how many times I've seen that. So K-N-O-W is the verb, right? N-O is you're saying no. So I can't tell you how many times I've seen what should be K-N-O-W spelled as N-O. That's one I don't understand. I don't understand why people make that mistake. I think we can blame texting for it. Like a lot of these types of problems, it's kind of easy to blame texting on or instant messaging. Lots of times you'll kind of like simplify down whatever you're typing just to take less time, right? Where smartphones and stuff now do correct your grammars, right? But I think a lot of these errors are because of that type of thing. That's my hypothesis, at least. Any others I need to mention? That's mostly it as far as common typos. So again, all these, they sound elementary, they sound rudimentary in that way, but they're not. These are the errors I see all the time. I just wanted to bring it to your attention. Last thing to cover is in-text citations. In-text citations. So let me just, hold on. I have a handout here, but it might just be easier just to type it out for you. Yeah, I'll just type it out for you. It'll be easier. Okay, so here's the general rule of thumb for in-text citations. So you write an in-text citation in a couple of different ways. And I'm going over this right now because it will impact, like let's say you bring a quote in from the August or Tannen article, right? This is how you do it. So you can write these sentences in two different ways. So one is where you bring the author into the sentence. The other is when you don't bring the author into the sentence. Maybe you're kind of vague about who the author is. So as you see here, another good thing to do when you're quoting something, you always want to make sure that you have some type of lead in to the quote. So you never want to just quote in a paper without some type of lead in to prepare the reader for the quote. So always give the reader some time. Always give the reader some context for your quote. But you see here I stated August's name, and if you state the author's name in the sentence, this is going to be something that definitely impacts you later for the research papers. But if you state the author's name in the sentence, maybe you give like some context like I just did. Note here I used a colon before I gave the quote. That's good style if you use a colon to introduce a quote. That's not, of course it's right grammar, but it looks fancy if you do that. You look sophisticated. But then of course you provide your quote, so however long your quote is. But if you have the author's name in the sentence, you don't have to put the author's name in the parentheses. So you don't have to put the author's name in the parentheses if it's in the sentence. But what you would put here is the page number where you found the article, where you found that idea, or where you found that quote. So if you're using that PDF of one of the articles that I gave you, maybe it's on page 35, the point about divorce, right? So you would put 35. And then the period actually goes after the parentheses. Period goes after the parentheses. The other way to do it is when you're, like I said, when you're vague in your sentence, where it's not clear who you're quoting from, in which case that's when you put the author's last name in the parentheses and then the page number. Sometimes you might quote something off the general web or something where you don't have a page number. In which case, if you don't have a page number, just leave that out. But most of the time you'll have a page number where you're quoting from, whether it's an article or whatever. Sometimes you won't. So in those cases, you won't need the page number. So as far as how I would recommend you do it, I think it's better style to do it the first way. Always kind of give in the sentence who you're talking about, and then it'll keep you from having to bring it in the parentheses. It's just better style to do it that way. I think the other way is not wrong, but this way is just better style. As far as I just think it's better style. That's just my personal opinion. I can't even really justify why I think it's better style. I just think it is. But that's pretty much how you do these. Okay. But always, like I said, give some lead into the quote, provide your quote, and then provide whatever info you need, and then the period goes after that parentheses. Questions about that, because that's something that you definitely need to know to do this paper. Anything I can answer about that, anything that's confusing. I want to state too that this is different. This works a little bit differently in APA style. So if you guys are doing a psychology paper or something like that, the rules are different in APA style. So I'm not going to go over APA style because in this lesson, but I do want to make it clear that if you have to use APA style, the way that you do this is slightly different. I think APA style usually wants you to do it in the second way, kind of like how I just did. The differences between APA and MLA and all that, I'll explain more on that later. But like different disciplines use different citation styles. Right, so I'm going to mostly teach you MLA in this course, but the general rule of thumb is if you learn how to do one, you can adapt and learn how to do the other. That's the basic. That's the basic rule of thumb as far as that goes. Any questions of any of that in-text citation stuff? Anything I can address? Give me thumbs up if you're feeling good. All right. Good. So the next quiz I give you will be pretty much on this stuff. I'll give you some of those misspellings, and I'll give you some in-text citations. Okay, so the next one we do, it won't be this week. It'll probably be next week. And that'll be what it'll be on. So without further ado, that's without further things to do, that's all we have on the docket for today. So we'll let you guys go. Have a good day. We'll see you next week.